Wednesday, 14th January 1761. The day of the battle. The Maratha generals began mobilizing their troops to their appointed places well before the sunrise. Ibrahim Khan Gardi with his artillery was on the left flank. On his right were the troops of Damaji Gaikwad and Vitthal Shivdev Vinsurkar. Sadashivrao and Vishwasrao were leading the center flank with their Huzarat, the Royal Elite Cavalry. With Huzarat were the troops of Antaji Mankeshwar, Satwoji Zadhav, Samsher Bahadur and Yashwantrao Pawar. To their right were the Shinde troops led by Jankoji Shinde. The experienced Malharrao Holkar was to protect the right flank on the west side. The non-combatants like the helpers, pilgrims, clerks, ladies and commoners were to march behind, protected by the main army. The estimated strength of the armies varies significantly in the available accounts. Most estimates put the Maratha combatant strength at about 70,000, with roughly the same number of non-combatants. Noticing the mobilization of the Maratha army, Abdali devised a moon crescent-shaped battle formation for his army. The formation was about 6 to 7 miles long. His troops followed the standard Mughal army formations. The Haraval, meaning the vanguard, the Barangar, meaning the right formation, the Jaranghar, meaning the left formation, the Kol, the main division, and the Chandaval, the rear guard. At the right end were the cavalry troops of Barkhurdar Khan and Amir Beg, with light artillery support. On their left were the Rohilla troops of Dundi Khan and his son Inayat Khan. They were at the vanguard while Hafiz Rahmat Khan's troops were at the rear. Hafiz Rahmat Khan was sick that day and hence did not participate in the battle initially. Aligned with the Rohillas was Ahmad Khan Bangash with his small army. In the center, pitted against the Maratha Huzarat cavalry, was the Wazir Shah Wali Khan. Haji Jamal Barakzai was at the vanguard on the right. Similarly, Nasrullah Khan Nurzai was positioned on the left flank of the rear guard, creating a reserve reinforcement in case the vanguard was to start a retreat. Behind this main Afghan army were the Kizil Bash, reserved forces in red uniforms. And at the very rear was the tent of Ahmedshah Abdali with his civil officers. To the left of the Wazir were the troops of Shuja-ud-Dawla and next to him Najib Khan Rohilla. Since Abdali did not have full faith in his Hindustani allies, Najib Khan and Shuja, he had placed them between his entrusted Afghan troops of Shah Wali and Shah Pasand Khan. Thus, the freedom to move or flee was restricted for these Indian Rohilla contingents by enveloping them inside the Afghan cavalry troops. At the very end, managing the left flank northeast of the Siwa village, blocking the traditional Mughal road connecting Delhi and Lahore, were the troops of Shah Pasand Khan. Abdali had about same number of combatants as the Marathas, if not more. Most contemporary records state a regular combatant numbers at about 80,000 combatants. Some accounts also state irregular participants in the Afghan army, strengthening their numbers by twofold. The number of non-combatants in the Afghan army was comparably low. The Afghan army had about 2,000 swiveling cannons mounted on camelbacks, called the Zamburak or the Zamburgs. These revolving cannons were to prove effective at dispersing the Maratha cavalry at the right moment. Apart from this, Ahmedshah Abdali had a reserve army of the Kizil Bash that was about 6,000 strong. These people were raised as his own slaves. The Kizil Bash were known for their red Turkish hats and their brutality. Abdali was in his tent about 2 miles away from the battlefield and was maneuvering the troops and ammunition supplies. He kept a reserve army at his disposal. Soon both the armies came face to face. The attack was initiated by Ibrahim Khan Gardi's artillery, and soon there was a barrage of cannon fire from both the sides. The Maratha cannons fired diligently, attempting to carve a gap in the Afghan army. Some volleys landed in the Afghan army, while some beyond the army troops. The sound of cannon fire and smoke roared through the skies at Panipat. Next, the Maratha infantry opened gunfire on the Rohilla troops, which had now come on the front of the Afghan cavalry. Dundi Khan and his son Inayat Khan stood ground to counterattack. Both sides suffered losses in this fierce gun battle, As the number of Gardi battalions reduced, the Afghan cavalry inched ahead. Now noticing Ibrahim Khan under attack, the Maratha cavalry led by Vinchurkar and Damaji Gaikwad charged in to oppose the cavalry. A fierce conquest ensued on the right flank. When the Rohilla infantry could not maintain their formation and started to retreat under heavy bombardment by Ibrahim Khan, Ahmed Khan Bangash's men stepped in at the critical moment. He helped to stabilize the weakening Rohilla front. Hafiz Rahmat Khan, who was sick and not on the battlefield, also heard the rumor that Inayat Khan was killed, and he quickly rushed in a palanquin to reach the vanguard with some reinforcements. Since Bangash and Hafiz Rahmat together had a small army, the Rohillas were looking at a certain defeat at this point. At the center, Wazir Shah Ali Khan's army now marched ahead. Sadashivrao ordered the Huzarat cavalry to charge on the center flank of the Afghan army. Led by Sadashivrao, young Vishwasrao, Shamsher Bahadur, Yashwantrao Pawar, and many valiant leaders like Satroji Jadhav, Sonji Bhapkar, Tukoji Shinde, Manaji Paigude, Subhanrao Mane, Antaji Madkeshwar, Bajihari Supekar, Khanderao Naik Nimbalkar, Santaji Wagh, Dadaji Darekar, Shahaji Zamre, the Maratha cavalry attacked the center flank of the Afghans with full force. This brutal onslaught by the Marathas completely routed the main Afghan army. The Marathas pierced through the Afghan central flank with precision. Noticing the sudden rout of his central vanguard, Abdali quickly sent 6,000 cavalry as a reinforcement led by Atai Khan and Haji Karimdat Khan to the rescue. Some accounts suggest that these reinforcements were to help the Rohillas, but they split to rescue the Wazir Shah Ali Khan. Perhaps the reinforcement was divided, trying to help the overpowered troops. The first reinforcements could not make much of a difference, as the Maratha Huzarat cavalry completely crushed the reinforcements as well. Atai Khan, who had brutally murdered Govind Pant Bundele earlier in December 1760, was killed by a Maratha bullet. The son of the Wazir, Shah Ali Khan, was also killed in this battle. The middle flank of Shah Ali Khan was completely broken. His men were now on the run. Watching his deserting army, Shah Ali Khan lost all hope. He got off his horse, pleaded them to return back in a sorry state. He also sent messengers to Shuja ud Dawla asking for help, but Shuja did not leave his position. About 3,000 Afghans died. Both the Rohillas and the Wazir's army were now on the verge of a defeat. Accounts note that Abdali began to think whether to relocate his tent and his harem elsewhere. He quickly sent his 2,000 Royal Nasakchi guards, that is his military police, to stop the rout forcefully and refill the formations left open by the desertions. He ordered the Nasakchis to drive the deserters back to the field by force. The military police managed to reinforce the front with about 14,000 men who had earlier deserted. Reinforcing the Rohillas with 4,000 and Wazir Shah Ali Khan with the remaining 10,000 to somehow stabilize the front. This quick reinforcement took away the chances of an immediate Maratha victory. The troops on the west front had not seen any major action yet. The Holkars, the Shindes, and Najib and Shuja with Shah Pasand Khan were about 3 miles apart. Najib Khan Rohilla's infantry skirmishers did not allow the Holkar and Shinde troops to advance by creating a smoke screen with the use of rockets and arrows. At about 2 p.m., Ahmedshah Abdali further managed to send additional 3 troops of 2,000 dragoons each, the Persian cavalry muskets, from his slave reserves. He ordered these 3 bodies of troops to attack in a formation, moving from left to right, right to left, center to back, and then back to forward. Each body was supposed to fire at once and then ride away afterwards. This was an intelligent counter move, as Abdali had observed in previous battles at Buradighat and Thanesar that the Maratha light cavalry was unable to maintain defensive positions under intensive mobile musket fire. The Maratha natural strategy, that is Ganimi Kawa, was to hit and run and attack when the enemy combatants were sufficiently detached from their main army. This highly mobile formation proved very effective. It had been 5 hours since the battle had begun. The Maratha soldiers who were fighting vigorously so far now were exhausted. The Marathas were already weakened, being famished for many days. Some were fighting on foot as their horses were dead. Under this renewed attack and persistent gunfire from the dragoons, some of the Maratha ranks now started to retreat from the advancing positions. Some private cavalry even started to desert the field of action. Just then, the disaster struck. The 17-year-old Vishwasrao was fighting on a horse named Dilpak. He was encouraging his army. The Afghan musketeers had been aiming for the Maratha chiefs. One of them hit the jackpot when a musket shot hit Vishwasrao. He was fatally injured. Sadashivrao was fighting around Vishwasrao on a horse named Pari. When he found out that Vishwasrao had been hit, he ordered for Vishwasrao's body to be moved atop an elephant. Bapuji Mahadev Hingne was quickly deputed to hold Vishwasrao's body atop the elephant. Thus perished the future Peshwa of the Marathas. Sadashivrao's chronicle, the Kaifiyat, states that he instantly pledged to kill Abdali in revenge. The death of Vishwasrao, however, changed the course of the battle. As the news of Vishwasrao's demise spread, the Maratha army started deserting in large numbers. Unlike their first attack on the Wazir, when they coordinated a well-formed assault, by afternoon the army flanks and formations were lost. What remained was a single group which could now be encircled easily. Eminent nobles like Mallarrao Holkar, his Diwan Gangoba Tatya Chandrachud, Vitthal Shivdev, Khanji Jadhav, Janrao Wable all left the battlefield on the news of Vishwasrao's death. By now, most of Ibrahim Khan's troops perished fighting on the field. He was now wielding a sword opposing the assault with his reserved flank near the Huzarat. He was severely wounded and taken captive. Damaji Gaikwad, whose division was supporting Ibrahim Khan's troops, was also severely wounded and taken away from field of action. Seeing the miserable condition of the Marathas, 2,000 Pathans who had earlier joined the Maratha army at Kunjpura opened plunder in the Maratha camp. They ditched the saffron-colored headscarves they had been given for the identification. The non-combatants thought that the Pathans from the main Afghan army had now broken into the Maratha ranks. Utter chaos broke out. Abdali sent another batch of Kizilbash fighters to assist the Wazir and ordered them to attack the Maratha center. Assisting them was the camel artillery, the Zamburaks. Each of the camel had 2 riders. The Shinde troops by now had engaged with their sworn enemy, the Rohilla troops, led by Najib Khan. With the Rohilla rockets terrifying the horses, the Shinde cavalry now moved to the center, joining the Huzarat in a combined effort to stop the rout. Sadashivrao was still fighting the enemy. He marched repeatedly towards Abdali, perhaps thinking that the outcome of the war would be decided instantly if Abdali, their leader, is killed. But blocking his way were the Kizilbash and the Zamburaks, the camel-mounted light artillery. Their barrage continued to block the Huzarat cavalry from reaching towards Abdali. Samsher Bahadur accompanied Sadashivrao during his 3 advances towards Abdali. The Shinde brothers Jankoji, Tukoji and Mukunji also came to his aid. With no luck breaching the Zamburak barrage, Mukunji Shinde advised Sadashivrao to withdraw from the battlefield. But Sadashivrao rejected the advice and insisted on leading the charge against Abdali. All 3 of Huzarat's spirited attempts to break through were repulsed by 1,500 strong Zamburak light mobile artillery mounted on the camels. With their opposing troops withdrawn or scattered, Shah Hasan Khan and Najib Khan Rohilla from the left flank now turned right and marched on to the Huzarat. The Huzarat cavalry and Sadashivrao were now attacked from all sides. If the Maratha right wing, which had deserted earlier, would have held its position and stopped Najib Khan, the encirclement and massacre of the Maratha center would not have been possible. The number of the Huzarat cavalry now began to rapidly decline. Tukoji Shinde died fighting valiantly during one of these last charges. Mahatji Shinde was grievously injured and miraculously managed to survive. The flag-bearer elephant and protecting it a few hundred of the last Huzarat riders were on the battlefield at this time. Abdali struck his final blow and sent his special Afghan slave cavalry troops to finish off the remaining part of the elite Huzarat cavalry. Thus, all of the remaining Huzarat horses and their riders were possibly killed or captured by this last reserve slave cavalry. On the battlefield, there stood only Sadashivrao, Jankoji and few of the last fighters. The elephant with the corpse of Vishwasrao was now steered by the Afghan soldiers. Nana Fadnavis, who was with the non-combatants in the camp, caught a final glimpse of Sadashivrao. who was now fighting on foot surrounded by the Afghan musketeers. The courageous Sadashivrao Bhau died fighting valiantly, like the true soldier he was. The battle, which had lasted 9 hours, thus stepped into its next realm: massacre.